Good afternoon, everybody. It is Thursday afternoon. It is Litsoc. We've got a nice bumper turnout. I think this is probably our biggest turnout of the year so far for our third Litsoc. Yeah. Yes, it's our third Litsoc. So what we're talking about today, we're talking about diversity in YA literature. Where has that diagram? There it goes. So now you all probably know what we mean by diversity, but I've got this helpful little wheel of diversity diagram. So we've got things like disability, sexual orientation, religion, socioeconomic status, gender, age, and so on, race, ethnicity. And of course, when we talk about diversity, we're talking about literature representing those things. And so we're specifically talking about how well YA literature recognise these things. Now, as I've said before in prior Litsocs, we are living through a golden age in YA literature in general. So I would say even as recently as the 1990s, there was not really that much in the way of books written for a teenage audience. You know, you had the children's books and you had adults' books. Now we've gone to the pit where you go into any bookshop, you can see a whole bookcase that is dedicated to YA fiction. And of course you have libraries that are predominantly dedicated to YA fiction, such as this one. Okay, so that's what's going on. Now, YA does move with the times, and as the world's awareness of the rights of, various diverse groups and the need to represent them in fiction has become more pressing, so has YA done the same, and there are more and more prominent examples of it. Okay, so now there are certain flashpoints that have led to a resurgence in it. So you think of George Floyd, for example. And that led to a resurgence in the Black Lives Matter movement. But, you know, those sort of like major flashpoints aside, there is a general increase in YA. So I've got an article here, and this was published last year, and it says here, number of young adult writers of colour doubles to almost 20%. So there's one positive trend, that there are more authors of colour in the UK. Okay, so there's a sign that we're sort of heading in the right direction. But we do have, you can feel free to pass this around and have a little look at it if you like. But we're not quite there yet, as this article testifies. Now, this article is from Book Trust. Have you all heard of Book Trust? It's basically a charity that is designed to ensure that young people have got access to books and reading, because some people don't have books in their home, so it's to ensure that enough people do. And this one says that representation in children's books still not reflective of society, as in it's not enough. This is less of an article. I've just got the front page of that one. Okay, so we do still have some way to go, but it's a work in progress, but we are getting there. Okay, so what I thought I'd do, I've got 3 examples in front of me here, so I thought I'd discuss these 3 examples and how they encompass the various issues that minority groups have to deal with. Okay. And the first one I'm going to start with is this one, and this is one that I'm sure a lot of people around the table are familiar with. It's mega popular, Heartstopper. Now, this started life as a webcomic back in 2016, and it proved to be a huge success, and it's now grown to the point that it's now been started to collect in different volumes of graphic novels. There are 4 out. This is the first one in my hand, and I think it's really captured the popular imagination of a teenage audience, which I'm sure who's read it. Okay, maybe about half of you. Okay, I was expecting to see more hands than that. It's really, really proven to be very popular. And I think it's because it's got a very down-to-earth approach. It's got a really down-to-earth take on LGBT issues for teenagers. Okay, so of course you all know what LGBT stands for. Now, as its protagonist, it features 2 protagonists. We've got Charlie and we've got Nick. And they're breakout stars because they originally appeared as supporting characters in the author. So Alice Oseman, I think that's how you say her surname. In her debut novel, Solitaire, they were like minor supporting characters. But they now have their own series, and they're arguably more famous. They're probably her most famous creation. So they're sort of like breakout stars, really. Now, it's easy to see why I think this is really appealing to a teenage audience. It's got a very simple premise, as it says on the front there, boy meets boy, and they fall in love with each other. So it's really simple, but it's very realistic, and it's very relatable. The details of school life, for example, they got class codes for individual lessons. I think it's 10H PE. They got those little details right, and that's what features in here. And also, what works about it, I think, is the fact it's a graphic novel. It's got illustrations, and it really exploits the fact that the medium of graphic novel is really exploited to the maximum, really, because it can depict The first love of adolescence. Now, this is something that perhaps a lot of you are yet to experience. Your first crush, the first person you fall in love with. It really depicts the vivid immediacy of that really, really well in terms of art. So we got two boys. So we got Charlie and Nick, and as part of their flirting, they sort of like engage in play fighting, and so that's just illustrated as a way of their flirting because they are boys. Boys will be boys, but we also have like tender moments as well. So I'm just going to show you. I don't know how well you can see this. So, there's no dialogue in this bit. So this is when they're watching a TV show together, Charlie and Nick. And Charlie, who's the younger one, he's fallen asleep while he's watching it. And then Nick is looking across at him. And he's just like looking at this and thinking, okay, do I not? He sees Charlie's hand is poking out of the duvet. And he's just like easing his hand towards him. And it's quite a sort of, you look at it, you're all sort of like on edge here, going, oh, what's going to happen? And there's not a single moment, and it's all it's a very simple art style, but it's done very effectively. You can see like there's Charlie's hand, there's Nick's hand, he's edging it towards it. So so that's done very well, and it's also it's not afraid to sort of like confront what can be some hard hitting issues. It's very brave and unflinching. So one example being the issue of consent. Now you all know what I mean by consent, yes? And so Charlie, he's the first character he meets, and the first panel actually is him kissing another boy called Ben. They're just like meeting up outside of lessons. And when Charlie moves on, Ben sort of tries to win him back, and he tries to win him back in quite a, shall we say, assertive manner. So it depicts. I'm not going to show you the panels for that, but it does depict it in a very sort of this is how it is. These are the facts. It's very straightforward and very confrontational. So it's very good at exploring hard-hitting issues such as that. But also it's very very frank and honest, I think, about how the LGBT community is viewed by those from the outside looking in, as well. So I've got another extract here. Now this is when Charlie, so Nick is on the rugby team, and he persuades Charlie to join the rugby team, and there is a bit of dialogue in this one. So we got three boys here. I can't remember their names. It says on the previous page, Christian, Cy, and Otis. Okay, so we got three boys. Okay, and they're basically talking about our two heroes. So one of them says, "But Nick's not gay, is he?" Well, I guess we don't know. He doesn't look gay. And didn't he have a crush on that girl, Tara Jones? And then suddenly we got Miss Singh, PE teacher and coach, appears. You can't tell whether people are gay by what they look like. And gay or straight aren't the only two options. Anyway, it's very rude to speculate about people's sexuality. Go home, lads. Okay, so it's very very clever in that it sort of like addresses, because these conversations still do happen. So it is still very realistic and very a very authentic depiction, I think, of what it means to be a homosexual. Because obviously when you're a teenager, you're still asking questions about yourself and still trying to find your way. So that's the first one. Now, Eleanor was talking a little bit about Heartstopper just before we turned the camera on. Would you like to remind us of what you said?
Yeah, so there's the known 4 published books, which is the graphic novels, and there's actually a 5th one, which is about a little bit after the 4th book has been released. And it's actually a novel, so there's a couple pictures here and then, but it's mainly a novel with words. And it's about Nick going off to university and how Charlie's struggling with that, and there's a lot of drama between them, and it's sort of one of their first real rough spots with their relationship rather than others.
So it's a continuation of the story from when they've left school, essentially.
Yes.
Whereas the graphic novels are, and of course the graphic novels are still ongoing.
Yeah.
These were written. The volume 1 was 2016, I think it was, or it was a few years ago anyway. And and what they do when they have webcomics like this, they just collect them periodically. So I think if you go to her website, you could probably find it online.
And there's currently a TV show. There's currently a TV show being filmed.
There's a TV show in the works. Probably going to be on Netflix, is it, or?
No. Oh, actually, I think it might be.
Okay, so I think it's Netflix.
There's a new content coming out. I think it's like every so often. My friend was telling me, like every week, I think.
On the website?
Or yeah, on the website. Or maybe was last year.
All right, well, I guess... Well, keep your eye out, but in the meantime, we do have the graphic novels, and they are constantly out on loan, so let's see. So get them while they're hot. This seems to be the new in thing at the moment. There's always one book that's in fashion. Now, I'm going to go to something a little less fashionable. So this one is called I Am Thunder by Mohammed Khan. Now, Mohammed Khan happens to be a maths teacher. He teaches at a school in Tooting. Okay. Now, this one is exploring issues of race and religion. Okay. The protagonist is a girl called Musna, and she is a Muslim girl from a very conservative family. To give you an example, her parents are quite pushy. They wanted to be a doctor. She wants to be a writer. Okay. So now you won't be surprised to hear this. There's the old culture clash thing. She's from this very traditional Muslim family, but she's been brought up in this country and more liberal. So there's the usual culture clash there. But it also deals with issues of prejudice and Islamophobia. Now, you've all heard of the term Islamophobia, right? It's sort of like it's basically a kind of prejudice against Muslim people, associating them with certain extremist practices like terrorism and all that. And of course, a teenage girl growing up in London has got nothing to do with that, but because of her appearance, people assume that she does. Okay, so it really stands out because of the fact there is a female protagonist. She has to deal with, as well as being a girl, and so therefore you must be obedient, you must be quiet, you must do as you're told. As well as being that, she also has to deal with all the baggage that comes with being a Muslim as well. So there's lots of things that she has to deal with, and she feels marginalised. She feels ignored. She feels like she's invisible. She feels silenced, and so she almost feels like obliged to sort of like keep her mouth shut and stay in the background, away from everyone. And so the novel is basically the story about her journey to becoming heard. So it's I am thunder, and I won't be kept quiet. And you can't actually initially see that. You can only see the I am thunder bit. That bit is more faded. So it's like it's a bit subtle about how she does that. Now, you might expect it to be, when I've described all of those things, there are some links to extremism and terrorism in this novel. She doesn't meet those kind of characters. You might think it's quite dark and heavy, but actually it is quite funny in places. And also it's very authentic. I mentioned that he's a teacher, and I think he's got a very good ear for dialogue. He's got the street slang down pat, and it's very authentic sounding characters. I think that's probably comes from his observations on his day job. Perhaps he works in this school, he might not be able to, because in this school we all don't necessarily talk in street slang, do we? But anyway, so it's a very notable read for that reason. It's good fiction's all about empathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes, and this is a good way to sort of like, okay, what's it like to be a Muslim girl growing up in this time? Yeah, so that's an example of a YA book that covers racism and religion. Okay, and then the last one I want to talk about before I throw it over to you is this one. Anyone heard of this one? A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Bernard. Anyone heard of this one? No. Okay. So obviously it's got a similar title to this one. It's got thunder in it. So this one is I Am Thunder, A Quiet Kind of Thunder. But that's where the similarities end, really. This one deals with an issue that I think doesn't get as many headlines as the prior two that we've just talked about when it comes to diversity and YA. This one deals with disability. Okay. So this one it riffs on, you might have seen, if you've been on the underground lately, you might have seen posters saying not every disability is visible. This riffs on that because the two main characters in this, their disabilities are invisible. One of them is deaf, and the other one is a selective mute. Okay, so Steffi is the selective mute, and Reese is deaf. Okay, now so Reese is new to the school, and Steffi has a basic knowledge of sign language. And because of that, she is assigned to look after him, to help him adjust to his new school. And the chapters, I don't know if you can see this very well. So number 4, you got the sign language for 4 above it there. Okay. Also, another thing about it, because they're communicating via sign language, they sort of, when they're having dialogue exchanges, it sort of changes the font like this as well. Okay, just to make it clear, just to sort of, and that sort of serves to get you inside of Reese's perspective or Steffi's perspective, because they're communicating in a slightly different way to the conventional way of talking. So it is about falling in love. You can see there's hearts, big heart. It is a love story, the throbbing heart on the front there, and on all the trials and tribulations from young love. But essentially, kind of like this one, it's about giving a voice to those who are voiceless, those who are underrepresented, and to those who perhaps we ignore and are on the margins. And this is what this one does as well. So in this case, it's those who are less outspoken. Now, if you feel like you are perhaps one of the quieter members of your class, sometimes when your teacher asks a question, it's always the same hands going up, or when perhaps you're doing something as a group, house choral, it's always the loudest voices in the room who sort of like speak the loudest, and you might think, they're the ones who are more confident, they're the ones who are going to be the good leaders. This shows that it's not always about those who speak the loudest, who are the most outspoken, who are necessarily going to be our leaders, who are necessarily going to be the best people, okay? So it's about how those who use less conventional methods of communication can sometimes have more to say than those who talk more. Okay, that's what this is all about. Again, it's a very inspirational and empowering read for that reason. And there is a dedication at the start, just to make that point really clear. At the start of the book, Sarah Barnard does dedicate the book to the quiet ones. So if you're one of the quiet ones, this book is for you. Okay, right. So I've given you 3 examples of some diverse YA fiction. But that's enough from me. I would like to now hear what examples of diversity in YA books you have all read. Who would like to start? Evie, what have you got?
Well, I've got this book called Dumpling, and it's the first of this series. And it's about this girl called Willow, or as she's known to her friends, Will. And she, her mum was a pageant queen winner. Mm-hmm. And so her mum is very high expectations of her, and she is overweight, and her mum nicknamed her Dumpling, but in a kind way. And so she is friends. She's going through teenage thing, and a new girl comes to the school. I can't quite remember her name, but she's just like, she's basically the picture of Little Miss Perfect. That is basically what she is, and I haven't really got that far into it, but from what I can see, Willow really doesn't like her. She's just like, oh, what is this new girl? She's just changing everything, and it's not right. And she realised that the new girl has entered the beauty pageant, and she's planning to sabotage it and win it herself to get back. It sounds like it's a really funny book, and it's really relatable. The conversations that they have are kind of conversations that any teenager could have, and I think this book's really good because it kind of shows that you don't have to live up to everyone's expectations.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, and of course it's about celebrating difference. Again, so it's diversity. It's about celebrating. So obviously, as you were saying, she's called Dumpling, and mum meant it kindly, but actually it's got negative connotations. Yeah. Is there a particularly funny bit that you could read to us, perhaps?
I can see if there is one.
While you're finding it, has anyone else heard of this, or is familiar with
watched the movie.
You watched the movie.
Yeah.
You as well,
really
Christiana.
good movie.
Yes. It's on Netflix as well, that one, isn't it?
Yeah. We watched it on New Year's Eve. And I didn't want to watch any more movies, but my parents were like, it's midnight, let's watch some more movies. But it actually turned out to be a pretty good movie.
Yeah. What's it called again?
It's called Dumpling. And it's the first in the series, so we got Pudding is the next one. And recently we had the third one out. I can't remember what it's called. Can you remember what the third one is called?
No.
We got it in Newton Library about last week.
No.
Or just before the summer holidays, one or the other. But yeah, so...
I think, isn't that one about a boy who's gay who decides to compete?
Oh, it's different. There we go. LGBT.
But it kind of,
Gay boy competing in a pageant.
Similar storyline, but shifted the main character a little bit, so maybe.
Yes. and again, it's very empowering because it's like when you think of beauty pageants, we've all been told what ideal body shapes are. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like Our Fashion Show, because Our Fashion Show, which actually I don't think most of you have been in yet, but Sienna's got a knowing look on her face. It's all about celebrating. Doesn't matter what what society tells you the ideal body shape is. Have you found a passage?
I think the first bit is actually quite a nice one.
Sure, go for it.
So in the story, she works in a drive-through, and her and her best friend love Dolly Parton.
Who doesn't?
That renowned
Yeah.
country singer, yes, indeed.
And there is a mention of a girl called, I think it's Jane, and Jane is her dead sister who was very close to her.
Okay.
All the best things in my life have started with a Dolly Parton song, including my friendship with Ellen Driver. The song that sealed the deal was Dumb Blonde from her 1967 debut album, Hello, I'm Dolly. During the summer before first grade, my Aunt Lucy bonded with Mrs. Driver over their mutual devotion to Dolly. While they sipped sweet tea in the dining room, Ellen and I would sit on the couch watching cartoons, unsure of what to make of each other. Then one afternoon the song came along over Miss Driver's radio. Ellen tapped her foot as I hummed along, and before Dolly even hit the chorus we were spinning in circles, singing at the top of our lungs. Thankfully, our love for each other and Dolly ended up running deeper than one song.
Was it?
Very cute.
Yes, it is. What song was it? 9 to 5.
No, it was Dumb Blonde.
Dumb Blonde. Okay, I don't know that one. I'm guessing that's how the TV series starts as well.
Yeah.
So, do you like Dolly Parton? No,
I only know 9 to 5.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is it? There's Jolene as well. That's another famous one.
Yeah.
So
I
it sounds
think
like
I might
she's
like her.
probably.
I just don't know any Dolly Parton.
Oh, if you've seen the movie, I imagine she's on the soundtrack a few times. 'Cause it sounds like they're obsessed with her. So yeah. Yes, definitely. Thank you, Evie. Okay, who would like to go next? Sophie?
Okay, well, I read this quite a while ago.
That's
but
fine.
It was quite a good book.
I'm just going to move the mic to you so we can hear you better. Yeah, go for it.
It's called My Brother's Name is Jessica. It's about a transgender boy. And it starts off... his parents are quite homophobic and they don't like it at all. So it's from the brother's perspective. And it's how his little brother feels going through this. And his brother gets bullied. And because the trans boy, he's been like the captain of the football team. And he's very popular. It's hard to explain. His brother's is like well known to being like that boy's brother, and so he gets bullied when people start figuring out, because his neighbour snitches on him, who's quite a mean boy, and he figures out what's going on, and then they start bullying him. And his parents, his mum's a politician, and a lot of society don't like it, so she doesn't want anyone to find out, so she's quite angry.
She's worried, she's worried about her standing in the community.
And she's trying to be Prime Minister. So.
She's trying to be Prime Minister, ooh, okay, yeah.
So they take him to like doctors to try and fix him. And he ends up like running away and living with his aunt, but no one knows this, so they're all quite worried. And the spot for Prime Minister opened, and so he's worried, but then the neighbour the press like kind of find out about this, and so then Jessica finds out what's going on, and he comes back and he cut his hair and
changed his look.
So then he looks like a boy again.
Okay.
And so he then comes up in front of the press and says, "I'm normal now." But then it gets quite emotional at that part.
Okay. Who's the author of this book?
I can't remember.
Okay, and so you read it a while ago.
Yeah.
So why did you enjoy it so much?
I think it was just like, I don't know, it was just very like, it started off everyone hating him and ended up everyone loving him.
Mm-hmm.
Or her. And I thought it was quite inspiring. Obviously like the brother got bullied a lot, and then the brother went off and tried to find him. So it was like both of their journeys in a way.
Sounds very moving.
Yeah, it was.
Yes. It sounds almost like he's gone from zero to hero. You say everyone hates him, and okay, well, so that's one that you would recommend.
It was definitely It was unexpected because like you expected it to be from Jessica's perspective, but it is from the brothers' perspective, and yeah, that was interesting.
Okay, yeah. So hang on, does it have more than one perspective?
No, just
the one perspective.
just the
okay.
brothers.
But it was surprising the way that.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you, Sophie. Thank you. Okay, so so far we've had celebrating, body positivity, different bodies, and then we got a bit of a transgender. So what's next? What can we discuss next? We'll have Emily, then we'll have Muriel, and then we'll have Eleanor. So, Emily.
Well, in the summer holidays, I read Ace of Spades, which is quite a new book.
Who's the author? It's a double-barrel name. I can't remember it. Can you remember the author's name?
No.
Okay. You want to tell us what it's about?
So basically, it was about this private school, but it's like a very traditional private school, and it's about from two people's perspective, a popular girl and a very shy boy, and they're both the only two black kids in the school.
Interesting.
And so basically, the boy's also gay, and he's come out, but his parents, he doesn't want to tell his mum, because she says that she's quite homophobic as well.
Okay.
But during the school happens is suddenly those two people get blackmailed and stuff by this texted person called Ace of Spades.
Mm-hmm.
And they suddenly get blackmailed, their photos are being shared, people taking photos of them, spilling their deepest secrets. And then the popular girl's like quite, she's popular, she's head girl, and she really wants to take that down, find out who's doing these things. So they kind of like team up. They don't really like each other, but they sort of team up to try and figure out who's doing this, while they're both having personal problems as well. Like the boy's having problems, like that his best friend's not his best friend anymore, and he doesn't know why, and he gets bullied quite a bit as well. And by the end, they realise that something quite, I don't want to do any spoilers, but something quite bad happened, very traditional with the school, and it wasn't just, it really gives out a lot of spoilers if I say, but like, you really won't expect what happens in the end. It's like, you won't expect who the Ace of Spades person actually was.
Okay, so a big twist.
Yeah, it's a big twist at the
Definitely
end.
don't tell us. So you didn't see it coming. Was it a good twist?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the most important thing. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it sounds really interesting to me. I mean, what did you like about it?
Well, I liked how it was about like diversity and stuff, but it was also a mystery book, and it gave like it was also romance, like it was everything in the book, and it showed both of their perspectives, and then they each like chapter was someone else's perspective, and say the chapter was a girl's perspective, then they would leave you on the cliffhanger, and then you have to read the boy's perspective and then get to, so you just want to keep reading it.
Yeah. I like that. At the time, you're like, oh no, but
yeah, exactly. I want to carry on with this perspective, and it pulls you out of it, but actually it works.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, as I was saying to you earlier, first of all, again, has anyone else heard of this? We have. You have heard of it?
Heard of it.
Heard of it. We do have it in library, but it's already out on loan.
Yeah.
My friend has it.
Oh.
Your friend's got it?
Yeah.
There we go, so now we know where it is. And yeah, it's the author, I can't remember her name, but she is a teenager. She's a bit older than, maybe she's about Sienna's age, possibly. I don't know for certain. I have to look it up again, but she's a teenager. And she sold the book for $1 million. So if you've got a good enough idea, any budding writers around the room, just goes to show. And that it sounds like a really good concept. The school politics and the sort of some anonymous person stalking. And what I also like about that is the fact you were saying the boy's gay, so there's like different issues at play too. It reminds me a little bit about The Hate You Give. Have you all read or heard of so the main character in that, she also she's a black girl who goes to a predominantly white school, and all the things she has to do with there. Really good, by the way, The Hate You Give. It also reminds me about this one, Lies We Tell Ourselves, and this one was shortlisted for the Carnegie Medal back in 2016. And what this one is set in 1959 in the USA, in the south of the USA, and it's about segregation. If you are aware of that, the fact that black people might be used to be segregated in the US, And again, it's two main characters, two girls, a white girl and black girl. The black girl is new to the school, and they get a very hostile reception. But they also start falling for each other, so there's a bit of LGBT in this as well. And of course, they're from opposite sides of the fence. And the white girl, she's the daughter of a very prominent politician, and he's very pro-segregation, so she's kind of torn in that sense. And so she's got her own prejudices. And essentially, I think when Sarah comes along to meet Linda, who's the white girl, then she sort of starts slowly unraveling those prejudices. But of course, it's a very bumpy path along the way. So yeah, so if you like that, I think you like this, definitely.
Most of these books, like, the parents are always, like, politics, like, important people.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. And it just goes to show, and, you know, maybe we should just pause the camera for a minute while I say this. Maybe your parents aren't always right about certain things. Hopefully the camera didn't pick me up. Okay, so thank you, thank you, Emily. So Muriel, what did you want to talk about?
I was going to talk about 5 Feet Apart. So it's about 2 teenagers who both have cystic fibrosis. But one of them also has dysphasia, so they can't come in close contact with each other. They have to stay 6 feet apart at all times. So at first they don't really like each other, but then they start like meeting each other and they like grow to love each other. But
they can't touch each other.
But they can't touch each other, so it's kind of difficult. And so the boy's called Will and the girl's called Stella. And Stella likes to be organised because like it helps her feel more in control, even though like her lungs and stuff are kind of out of control, as it says on the blurb. And Will kind of does the opposite. Like his mum wants to try and save his life, and so she puts him in. She's constantly moving him from hospital to hospital, trying to find a cure for his dysphasia, so he can at least just live with cystic fibrosis and have a chance to get a lung transplant, because otherwise he can't have a lung transplant. But he doesn't want to, so I think he's almost 18. I think he has his 18th birthday later in the book, and he wants to leave the hospital because then he can make his own decisions. He wants to leave the hospital and not have to go through any of the tests and things like that. So, but his mum really wants him to, so she's kind of trying to force him to stay in the hospitals. But he's been to lots of places, but always being kept inside the hospital, whereas Stella's been allowed outside because she's always known to be really responsible, but she's never really moved. She has to cancel at the very beginning her school trip with her friends because her lungs just won't, like, they can't risk it, her being away from the hospital. So she does miss out on quite a lot, and they kind of bond over
over both missing out on quite a lot of things.
Yeah. So.
Oh, Emily, yeah. You don't put your hands up, by the way. Just jump in.
What happens if they do become between 6 feet?
So basically Stella, because she doesn't have dysphasia, but she can catch it really easily. So if she goes within 6 feet of Will or anyone else with dysphasia, she could catch it, and then she'd be taken off the list for the lung transplant. And I think at this point, at the very beginning in the book, I think she's quite high up, like 6th on the list or something. So, and they know she has a few years, she has like long enough to wait. But, yeah, so, but at the end of the book, I don't want to spoil it, but at the end there's kind of a bit of a twist, I guess. Not a big twist, but it's a bit.
Stuff happens.
Yeah. And, yeah, it kind of leaves you like really hoping like that they're all okay, and it's quite yeah, it made me feel quite worried about her, to be honest. And yeah, I thought it was just a really nice book about how, like, because at the beginning, on the back it says, "Can you ever love someone you can't touch?" And I think that's like a really good question. And so, it's called 5 Feet Apart because, like I said, they have to be 6 feet apart, but at one point, but Stella gets kind of reckless, I guess, and she wants to go within 5 feet. So they get this like pole and measure the distance. So yeah, I just really like the book.
And it makes all the difference. And it sounds like you got really emotionally invested.
It's
And
really
you really
Yeah.
felt for them.
Yeah, I did. And another book I read, I'm not going to go into the details, but it's actually a murder book, but it did have a bit of like LGBTQ kind of thing. So one of us is lying. So I mean, they have a few.
Need we say more about
Things.
that
I
one? I reckon at least
Yeah.
half of you must have read that one as well, right?
I mean,
Yes.
obviously it's a murder book, but
No, it's okay. I mean, look, you know, a lot of these aren't. You know, this is. Sorry, maybe not the one that Emily was talking about. Ace of Spades. That's
Yeah.
kind of a thriller, really, isn't it? But it still deals with those issues.
yeah. But then one of the main characters, because I think there's 5 main characters. One of them is gay, and their dad especially is really against that. He's quite homophobic, but his grandma's like, she's known all along, even though he only came out recently. Also, it really affects his future career because I think he does baseball. But at first, loads of people wanted him to come to their university. Then he only got 1 scholarship, and before he had like 10, and only 1 supported his choices after he came out as being gay, and I think that was quite important to the story.
I
So.
think the way that the author announced that he was sort of gay in the book as well, it was just done brilliantly.
Yeah.
It didn't just say in words, I'm gay. It was just like
Yeah, it was like hints along, and then
Yeah.
finally it kind of happened. Like
conclusion.
because at the beginning of the book, where their secrets were released, and they didn't tell you their secrets, but they hinted at them, like told you maybe where they were or who they were with when their secret was released and things like that, and it gave you like hints throughout the different chapters of who had what secret and things like that, which was really good.
I'm a good author.
Can I also say, if you're considering reading 5 Feet Apart, read the book before the film.
Yeah,
Because
do that.
Always.
The film is, at least in my opinion, absolutely horrible compared to the book. It's completely been ruined. It's like they just read the plot and that was it. They didn't even read the book. And the 5 Feet Apart does have like an epilogue right at the end, and the film does not at all. And they've changed so many scenes, so many characters.
If you're
It's
the director of the
completely
movie, don't watch this.
Yes.
Yeah, I've never watched the film for 5 Feet Apart.
I watched it in cinemas when it first came out with my friends. Yes, I'm old. So
You're old. Okay, sorry, carry on.
well,
carry on.
I watched it in cinemas because they wanted to watch it because I don't remember who they wanted to see an actor in it.
Oh, probably Cole
Yeah.
Sprouse or something.
Yeah, I think it was Cole Sprouse, and they were like, "Oh, let's go see it because of him." And I was like, "Okay." And so I watched it, and I thought it was a really good movie. And then I read the book afterwards, which I kind of wish that I'd read it first and then watched it. But yeah, do read the book first.
Almost always, that's the
Yeah.
truth about films we made out of books as well. Okay. Thank you, Muriel. So Eleanor, what were you doing to share with us?
I read a book like 2 years ago, so I can't really remember the names, but it was called Birthday, and it's about this boy who, I think quite early on in his life, realised he wasn't a boy, and every chapter is set from his 12th birthday to his 18th on that one day. There's I think 6-7 chapters, and they're all 12th birthday, 13th birthday, 14th birthday, and you see his life change every chapter. And his mum has died, unfortunately, and his dad is a bit, he's a coach at school, and he's a bit shaken up, I think, by his wife's death. And something that he always remembers is once him sneaking into the kitchen when it was past his bedtime, and them his parents watching a TV show, and they made a transphobic joke, and he therefore was very afraid to come out. And it's all along with his best friend and they're both boys. They're before he transitions, both boys, and they're best friends. And one of them's a shining star, the other one isn't really. And it's all about how he tries to stop himself from achieving what he really needs to achieve, which is transitioning. He struggles heavily with mental health issues, struggles heavily with socialization with his school because of stuff like this. He tries to date girls and
Just to fit in. Yeah.
yes, and forces himself to do manly things, even though he's not, and he's well, technically straight because he then identifies as female, and he has therapy, and it's all about how hard it is for him. And it's also actually a romance between him and his best friend, and I suppose his best friend isn't gay because she's she's a woman, and so but it's about how they sort of fall in love and don't even realise it.
Right.
I think it's quite an inspirational book.
Yes, I think is it Meredith Russo? Is that the author?
I have no idea. I once gave it to my friend to borrow, and they never gave it back.
The cover, it's
Just
just
the
got
candle.
one candle on the
Yeah,
cover.
and it's,
Yeah,
it's
yes.
rainbow.
It's
Yeah.
Meredith Russo, right?
So it could read
Yeah, I
that.
think we got it here, over there somewhere. We'll try and find it later. But yes,
Can I just say about 5 Feet Apart? If you like 5 Feet Apart, I'd recommend The Fault in Our Stars as well.
well, there's another. That's a ridiculously famous one,
Yeah.
which I'm sure at least all of you have heard of. So, whereas this one, is it similar to any other books that you've read, or that maybe we've talked about, or that you're familiar with?
No, not really. I mean, I guess it can fit into any category that's like to do with that.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't think it's necessarily reminds me of any of the books. But a book that is also similar to 5 Feet Apart, and I read almost immediately afterwards, is Everything, which is which is by the same author as
Nicola Yoon.
yeah.
The Sun is also a star.
Yeah, and
Nicola
The
Yoon.
Hate You Give.
The Hate You Give is Angie Thomas.
Oh no.
Everything is very good.
Yes, they do. Sorry.
Everything is very good.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that one, maybe, Sienna, for
Oh
us?
god, I read it quite a few years ago.
Well, what can you remember about it?
Well, it's about this girl who can't leave her house because if she goes outside, she'll get very ill. I don't really. Yeah, I think she just can't go outside of like completely clean, filtered air, and like so she has to have like an airlock before anyone else can enter her house, and so she has this like kind of garden thing, but like indoors, so she can still experience it. But she's never actually left her house because she will die, and it's about like her life basically, and it's a really cool story.
It is. And yes, very reminiscent of 5 Feet
Yeah,
Apart.
she falls in love with the boy next door who, and it's about how they care for each other even though they can't meet, and it's about how he changes her life so much, and it's got some great plot twists.
So, again, I can see, there's a similarity with 5
Yeah,
Feet Apart.
big plot twists. and
Big
it's
plot
very good.
twists.
Yes.
Another one of the big plot twists. So what would you say, is it, how would you describe the mood of the book? Is it uplifting? Is it sad? What would you say? Not uplifting, Alan says.
It's not
What would you say?
I mean, it's quite emotional, and it does take you on quite a journey.
It's 4:57.
Yes, it's nearly 5 o'clock. Just a reminder, don't feel obliged to stay. If you need to go, then you can go. Bye.
I don't know if
See
it
you again soon.
necessarily is uplifting or moody, it's just sort of not exactly, it just sort of makes you completely absorbed with the book.
Yeah.
rather
Very
than
immersive,
making
yes.
you feel specifically.
Okay, so very gripping in that regard. Yeah, okay, which they all are. Yes!
A really good TV show, which I think is on BBC. I watched it a couple of months ago. I cannot remember the name, but it's all about. It's set in Australia, and it's all about this trans girl called Hannah, who has
First Day.
Yeah, First Day.
It's called First Day.
It's
Okay.
really
First
good,
Day.
and she's starting her secondary school, and she's got her little friendship group. But a girl from her primary school turns up, who
who knew that she was a boy at one point, and she starts threatening to reveal that she's trans.
Okay.
And also there's a lot of things, at one point, the mean girl and her friends graffiti over the girls' toilet saying this is girls only kind of thing.
But a bit of transphobia there.
Then they go on a residential trip, and there's a really heartfelt scene where
Can you fit through?
ev-
Do you want to go the other way? This is a huge chair. Thank you, Eleanor. Bye.
where everyone's sitting around a campfire, and they're all like, and they're playing Truth or Dare. One of her friends asked her, how did you know you were a girl and not a boy? And she's just like, well, I knew it I knew it about the same time that everyone else knew whether they were a boy or a girl. And she always said that whenever she was given like trucks or stuff for her birthday, and this is quite stereotypical, but when she was given all that for her birthday, she's just like, I don't want that. And I'm not going to give everything away, but I think it's only about 4 episodes. But they will go over, and it's very relatable because it can be what any trans person goes through. And with friendships, you might lose some, and you might gain some. But I got really hooked on it, and it's actually really interesting because the actor playing the main character is actually trans herself.
That's a good way to help with the authenticity.
Yeah.
You're increasingly hearing about that. It was. And this is too old for all of you. There was, It's a Sin. Did you watch that, Miss Rio?
I didn't, but
Okay.
I want to.
Russell T Davies.
I want to watch it.
It's definitely not. Sienna, maybe, but the rest of you, no, it's too old for you.
Very
but
sad.
all of the actors in it were gay in real life. And that helps with authenticity. Now, that's a whole other debate. Can you? I mean, if you're a good actor, you shouldn't have to be. But it does. It's like if you're talking about representing these people, then you definitely want to be given in real life, giving those people the opportunity to act in the thing, right? So that makes sense. Right, I've noticed the numbers are thinning, so I'm going to hand over to Miss Rio. Miss Rio, you got one that you want to talk about. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I was just talking about the topic of disability, and I had one, which was this one, which I know you girls said you don't know if it was diverse or not, but as you find out when you're reading, the main character has Down syndrome in this book, which is really interesting because it's not really something you see very often. You don't really often see main characters with a disability like that.
Absolutely.
I haven't actually read it, but I've heard good things because it's one of the only books that...
Is it Rosie or Jack who's got Down syndrome?
Rosie.
Rosie's got Down syndrome.
So she has this boyfriend, Jack, who... I don't think he has Down syndrome. I'm not sure. But he moves away, and she basically is really upset about it. So she crosses the country to go and see him, and everyone thinks you can't possibly do it because you have Down syndrome. They kind of don't believe that she's going to be able to make that journey on her own, and she does it anyway.
Right.
So yeah.
There you go.
I think that's interesting. It's not always obvious. Sometimes you have to read the book to kind of...
Well, as other people are saying, sometimes that it can get lost in the shuffle a little bit. I was just thinking of She Is Not Invisible by Marcus Sedgwick. That's not one of it. It's because twist, she's blind, and of course that's another thing. It's kind of forget it sometimes as you're reading it.
Yeah.
So it's a good example.
An interesting one.
And as I said to you, of all of because LGBTQ stories are very fashionable, and I would also say things to do with race are also quite fashionable, but disability they exist, they're there, but they don't get as much highlights as perhaps they should, even though it's something that as society as a whole we're increasingly aware of. Evie?
Really good, another really good program about this.
Excellent.
It's called The Dumpling Grounds, and it's one of my favourite TV shows. It's all about these kids in a children's home, so all sorts of things have happened to them during their childhood, and they've had to been taken away from their parents. And when you think about that, you think, it's going to be a really horrible place. It isn't, and it deals with a lot of modern issues. For example, in the older series, one of the boys has cerebral palsy, but sometimes, and he's really nice,
The actor actually has cerebral palsy
Yeah,
as well,
he
doesn't
actually has
Which is a
cerebral
good
palsy.
thing, yeah.
And then in the newer series, there's a boy with, I think he has Down syndrome. I'm not too sure, but I think he does. Called Finn, and he loves swimming. And he goes to the swimming competition, and there's this other boy there that he doesn't know. And that boy's really cocky. He's really arrogant. He's just like, "Oh, you're never gonna win." And the whole everyone in the care home comes and supports him, and he actually wins. And I love it.
All fuzzy feeling inside.
Yeah, I really love it because also one of my favourite characters has achondroplasia.
Oh, right.
And I have to say, she's one of the. She can be a bit of a bully, but she has a really kind heart, especially because she had to look after her little brothers because her mum would end up kind of not really being a good mum, just kind of like going off and just saying, "Oh, Sasha can look after them; she's old enough." And I don't. The series it's really gripping, and especially it can get quite dramatic. I think one of the most dramatic moments was when there are there's a brother and sister in the home called T and Johnny, and their stepfather was extremely abusive, so they got taken away for their safety. And there's this one moment, and they haven't seen their mum in a while. She's actually been in a women's refuge, and their mum is quite naive. She's just like, the stepfather's changed. I'm gonna go back with him. Obviously, it hasn't changed. Yes, and she ends up having his child, and Johnny and T don't know about it. And then Johnny doesn't really have a good view on their mum. They're just like, "Oh, well, she abandoned us. She abandoned us to go with Steve. She's the worst mum in the world." And then T gets contacted by the mum. He's saying, "Look, I've changed. Will you come and see me and your little sister?" And she goes. And then when they realise that, the abusive stepdad is still with the mum, they're just kind of like, "Oh no, we know this is going to be bad. Hope's in danger. We've got to do something." And Johnny, because Johnny is the older one, and he was in this episode, he was actually getting ready to go into the army, and when he confronts the stepdad, saying, "I had to." Because he had to, when they were kids, he had to lock T in her room so that she wouldn't get hurt, and the stepdad took it all out on him.
Oh wow!
So he stood up, and when I first started watching it, I was just like, "Oh my god, this is so scary!" And then I kind of got into it. I was like, "Oh my god, what's going to happen next?"
So it sounds pretty hard-edged and edgy.
I guess that's
it's so
yeah.
good. It's like
okay.
one of the best TV shows.
It sounds very diverse as well.
Exactly. This is it exactly. And I was just thinking, when people can talk about it, it's like it's not just. Like this one, for example, it's not just about that issue. And a lot of these things, there's lots of crossover between different areas. So, right, I'm just looking at the time. It's coming to 5:10 now. No sign of Lulu or Miss Huntley.
No.
So unless anyone else has got anything burning, I think we shall leave it there for this week. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. It's a really good discussion this week. I can't remember what we're doing next week. Can you?
Yes, my Litsoc.
Oh, is it your turn?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Miss Rio, do you want to say, or do you want to keep it under wraps?
I'll keep it.
You keep it under wraps. Okay. So we'll see you this time next week. Same time, same place. Until then, keep reading, and see you soon.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.